Looks like we've got everyone, except for the clock. Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome. Thanks, everyone, for joining us this evening. I'll call this meeting to order and open it with roll call, please. Mr. Lewis.
Eltham,
Here. Here. Does it not hear me?
Nystrom,
Here.
Teben,
Here.
Pritchard,
Here.
Melhouse.
Here. Okay, first thing we're going to do is have recognition of visitors. I don't see any visitors on here. I believe that we may have had a Doors Award winner, and I'm going to turn the floor over to Mr. Kelly. Is my understanding he knows something about that.
Yes, we had. We would like to recognize Angela Johnston. She's been subbing for Angel Price since before the school year started, and so as we talk about going above and beyond, we recognized her last week at school. We decided rather than trick her and get her to put extra hours in coming to the board meeting, we'd recognize her at school in front of the teachers and kids, and so she really appreciated that. But anybody that knows Angela knows that she really cares about the kids and the students and the staff. And she has really taken on the role of, we're lucky in the sense that she has her teaching degree as an associate working in that classroom. So she has taken over that role and many days taken on the responsibility of being the teacher and the associate and taking on special education, which is a chore in itself. Along with working with all the other special ed teachers to make sure that everything is up to date and the kids are getting what they need. And so she has spent endless hours working to do what's best for kids. And so she's always willing to put in to do that work. And I think the best thing that we talk about is anybody that knows Angela Johnston just knows that she's an amazing person. So super kind, super sweet, great to work with, and would just give everything she has to help anybody. So we appreciate everything that she's done to step in and help out.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Kelly, for that kind report. Next, we're going to move to consideration of the agenda. Ms. Tripa, any changes?
There are no changes to the agenda. The agenda can be presented.
Okay, I will entertain a motion for approval of the agenda as printed.
Move to approve agenda as printed.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Pritchard, secondary by Ms. Dr. Nystrom to approve the agenda as printed. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed, nay. Okay, the motion passes. Next, hearing from delegations. Again, I don't see anyone on here who is not on the agenda later who's administration. I would like to recognize Dr. Nystrom if she would like to make a mini presentation.
Well, I'm going to be the delegation from the Retired Senior Volunteers Program, RSVP. They don't know that they're going to get thanked tonight, but I'd like to thank all the ladies that generally are quilting. They've been making hundreds of masks for our elementary kids. And I know that I've taken lots of them up to Franklin and to Page. And we have a process that's very safe. The coordinator, Michelle Hall, has everything bagged up. She and I both wear masks and meet at the door of their office. building, and then I take them to the schools and meet at the doors of the schools. But it's been something that I felt like I could do. And then RSVP is also delivering 45 packages for Friday Food Friends on Fridays. And I want to throw out a big thank you to Ted and Linda Hora, who are the ones that actually are doing this. They pack on Thursdays and take the food to the schools, and then the secretaries too are to be thanked, and the school staff, and then they make sure the kids get them on Fridays. So we're still doing things for kids, trying to be safe as possible, but you know, RSVP still wants to help our kids.
Okay, I'd like to thank the RSVP personnel as well. For many years, they came and presented for the Friday Food Friends program, get our approval, and 2 or 3 years ago, we just approved it automatically in long term. And we probably have forgotten to thank them a little bit every year, which we used to be able to do. So thank you again for all the service and work you've done for our community. Okay, next I will move on to the consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion for approval.
I move to approve except for 2 bills in our November bills, one to the Boone County Hospital for $616 and one to Pritchard's for a whole $8.
Okay, is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Mrs. Stevens, secondary by Mr. Elton, that we approve the consent agenda, pulling out bills for the Boone County Hospital of approximately $616 and of Pritchard Brothers Plumbing for a huge total of $8.00. Is there any discussion or questions about any other items on the consent agenda? Hearing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda with the 2 exceptions.
I move
A
to
question.
approve the agenda.
No,
with-
I'm sorry. No, wait. I messed that up. All in favor, say aye. There's already a motion.
Oh, okay. Aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Okay, now I'll take a motion for the other 2 items individually.
I move to approve the Boone County Hospital bill for $616.
Second.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Pritchard, secondary by Dr. Nystrom, to approve the Boone County Hospital bill for $616. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say yes.
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 Yes. Opposed? And I will abstain from that vote. And motion passes. Now we have one more item to deal with.
I move to approve the bill for Pritchard Brothers for $8.
I would second.
Okay, it's been moved by Mrs. Teeben, secondary by Mr. Elfman, to approve the Pritchard Brothers bill of $8. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Abstentions?
Yes.
Okay, it's been moved, it's been approved for the Pritchard Brothers bill. Moving on pretty fast here. Next is on the agenda is the IJAG agreement.
So
Ms. Trudeau?
last month, we approved the IJAG contract. This is an IJAG MOU that gave more specifics. So I would recommend that we approve the MOU as stated in your documents.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve this memorandum of understanding?
I would motion to approve the IJAG MOU.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved by Mr. Elfon and seconded by Dr. Nystrom to approve the memorandum of understanding with IJAG Any further discussion at this time? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor of approval of the memorandum of understanding, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Next, we will talk about the hard surface road.
So every year you examine the hard surface stops so that prior to needing to utilize hard surface only, that we have identified the stops that will take place if we have to, due to weather, have hard surface only. And so in your documents has the stops that were designated by Mr. Kennedy as hard surface areas that we would stop at if the weather would so deem it necessary.
Okay. Probably not gonna have to worry about this in too muddy of roads right now. Okay, is there a motion to approve the hard surface road?
This is Pat. I move to approve the hard surface road plan.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Mrs. Teven, seconded by Mr. Pritchard to approve the transportation hard surface road report as presented to the board and included in the vote. Okay, any discussions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The motion passes unanimously. Okay. Next is the Apogee project.
So last month we had explored the Apogee product as a way to revamp our website in addition to providing an app for our constituents as well as staff to utilize in a way to utilize communication in a one-stop shop. The funding will come from Title IV funds. And I have been able to, some of the questions that had arisen previously were whether the apps of Seesaw or Google Classroom could be embedded in the app if we were to adopt Apogee, and they could be, so that you would have one location to go to. You wouldn't have to have separate apps. That would be up to us how we would like that to look within that app. And so that was probably the main question that I received from some of our parents in communicating with them about that possibility. I would also entertain, well, after you have motions, if there are any other questions, I'd be happy to answer those. I was able to forward, I believe all of you in some of the news and notes, some examples of what this looks like in different districts. So you could see how it's utilized in different districts too, because it's personalized to each district.
Okay. Is there a motion here?
Since I was the one that originally moved to table it till this time, I will go ahead and move to accept the proposal.
Okay. Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Ms. Stephen and seconded by Mr. Pritchard to proceed with the Apogee project as presented at our last board meeting and updated, having answered several of our questions. Is there any further discussion or questions on this issue?
I had one question regards to the timeline of that process, as far as what are they suggesting once they get the information, when that could be up and going?
So that'll be largely dependent upon us as to some of the decision making that we'll need to have. So my target date would be for second semester, honestly, given some of the holidays that are quickly approaching. So that would be the goal. But some of that will be dependent upon how quickly we make decisions on things that they present to us. So the goal would be second semester.
Thank you.
Okay. Other questions, concerns? I would just say that I think it'll be nice for people to be able to have an app that they can open to access our school district. It'll help conservatively with our communications. Also, our current website does need some updating, and I think this would be a good way to get two things accomplished at the same time. So, and Mrs. Tripa has had experience working with this company before, and has liked their services as well. Okay, hearing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, nay? Okay, motion passes unanimously. Now I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
As moved by Mr. Pritchard, seconded by Dr. Nystrom to adjourn this meeting. Just a little explanation here, folks. What happens is we are currently adjourning for the prior board year that just completed here in November. We used to do this in September every year. Every year by state law, we're required to reorganize. And so that's what this is, a reorganizational component. So this will be a brief 10-second adjournment. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, nay? Okay, this meeting has been adjourned. Now I'm going to turn the meeting briefly over to Mr. Lewis.
All right, I'm going to call the meeting to order for our annual meeting. Roll call, Elson,
Here.
Nystrom,
Here.
Teben,
Here.
Pritchard,
Here.
Melhouse.
Here.
All right, the first item on the agenda is the election of the board president. Is there a motion on the floor?
I would move to elect Brian Milhouse.
Second.
All right, first motion by Nystrom, second by Pritchard. Any questions? All in favor say aye.
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 All right, Dr. Melhouse, you are president. Do you solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Iowa, and that you will faithfully and impartially, to the best of your abilities, discharge the duties of the office of the Board of Directors for Boone Community School District as now and hereafter required by law?
I will.
Great. Unmute.
I'll open the floor for nominations for vice president.
I move to elect Pat Teben for vice president.
Second.
Okay. It has been moved by Dr. Nystrom, seconded by Mr. Pritchard to nominate Mrs. Teben as the board vice president. Any other nominations or discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of Mrs. Teben taking the vice presidency role again, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, so we'll get to do this electronically here. Yeah, Ms. Stevens, I can see her on video here. Do you solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Iowa, and that you will faithfully and impartially, to the best of your ability, discharge the duties of the office of Vice President of the Board in the Boone Community School District as now and thereafter required by law?
I will.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, next on the agenda is the Board of Education travel. Mrs. Tripa, you want to explain this real briefly? You're on the.
Okay, in non-COVID year, you would normally have some travel. So we would normally approve Board of Education travel, especially to like the Iowa Association of School Boards And so that's just part of our normal process. And so we're going to hope that at some point we'll be able to travel again. And so I would encourage the approval of board travel if it's deemed safe at some point.
And there are some board policies on that if we actually get to that point, but usually the board only travels to Iowa School Board Association state meetings and some regional meetings throughout the course of the year, but they're usually within 50 to 75 miles. Okay. Is there a move to approve the Board of Education travel?
So moved.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, it's moved by Mrs. Teben and seconded by Mr. Elphone by a split second to approve the Board of Education travel. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Next is the appointment of legal counsel, Ms. Treatman.
So again, every year we do appoint legal counsel as a Board of Education. I would recommend the appointment of Alderson Cooney Law Firm as a school attorney and Jordan and Mahoney Law Firm as a local attorney for the 2021 school year.
Okay, is there a motion?
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Dr. Nystrom, seconded by Ms. Stephen to appoint Alderson Cooney as the law firm for the school, as the school attorney, and Jordan Mahoney for a local attorney for the 2020-2021 school year. Is there any further discussion on this matter? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Okay, motion passes. Mike, did we beat the AIM School Board timing and getting to this point?
You guys are on a roll. I do not want to be the person that slows you down.
Okay, I'm going to turn the meeting over now. As everyone knows, we are in the middle of bonding to build a new elementary center on the south side of town. In the past, we have worked with the DLR architectural firm and then have done our own, trusted them to do the construction construction work. A lot of people over the last few years have been changing to having a construction manager help out. Mr. Pritchard and I happen to be the two board members that are in charge of grounds and buildings. And so we've been working on this project, and our research has shown that it might be a benefit to have a construction manager come in and assist and take over some of those responsibilities. And so we contacted Mr. Espasat, who is president of Story Construction, to give us a presentation on this option. The reason I was asking him earlier was he served 6 years on the AIM School Board, including as vice president. So he does have some knowledge of the school board world too, and what our restrictions are. So I'm going to turn the presentation over to Mike. And I don't know, Mitch, I don't know if he's going to need to share screen.
You should be able to share screen, Mike.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
Yes, I think hopefully you can all see that. It's a pretty good metaphor. My wife got her teaching career started in Boone at Bryant Elementary in 1989, and she's now a dyslexia reading tutor. So you see the Wilson program displayed behind me. You all are in an auditorium, and I'm in my wife's teaching classroom in our home. So you actually are really keeping a good pace. So I will seek to keep this pace with you. Let me put this on presentation mode. So really, as Brian indicated, I did serve on the Ames board for 6 years, and so I fully appreciate what it's like to be in your seat. And thank you for your work. I served in a pretty calm time, not a COVID time. You all are to be commended for your service at any time, but particularly now. So our company's been around for 86 years. Here's some statistics about us. I'd say one thing that is noteworthy here is we've really completed 32 school projects since 2000. So in the last 20 years, we've served a number of Iowa school districts, primarily as a construction manager. And here's an articulation of some of those districts, many of them concentrated around central Iowa, but really throughout the state. And so there are a few pieces to point out related to how a construction manager differs from a general contractor, and they can really be articulated on the slide. So you as a school district hire DLR as your architect. It's a professional service. You can hire your construction manager in the same way through a professional service thing, just like you did with your legal counsel tonight. And then these two, our two firms join you early in the design process, and we walk through the design along with you and the architectural firm to be able to provide real-time feedback as we go. One of the consequences of this is that when we get to that bidding time and we take the project to the market, all the bid package contracts are held by the district. And on the kind of project you're describing, it could be anywhere from probably 15 to 20 different packages. We manage them all on your behalf. We lead them all on your behalf. While technically we're not allowed to act as your general contractor, for all intent and purposes, our role as a construction manager is to do just that, to lead and orchestrate the work during the project. We don't self-perform any of the work that stays in place. We're just the leaders and orchestrators of that. And so a lot of school districts might wonder, well, why do people do this? Well, school superintendents and the business managers and boards and building principals already have a plate that's plenty full and probably too full. And so this is a way that a school district can choose who's going to lead their effort and who's going to work on their behalf, and then have that happen so they can tend to the business of teaching and learning more so than over focusing on a construction project or one that could be problematic. So it's not an added cost. It's not a bolt on. It's just really a replacement of the services of leading a project that you choose somebody to do on your behalf. Say the last thing, and it's significant, is that a construction manager is there to represent the district. It's not there to represent itself as a general contractor. We're really there as an extension of your staff and an extension of your team. And so with that, during the pre-construction phase, during design, there's a lot of estimating that happens and value engineering and review of how the project happens. And this is a graphic that I created about a decade ago. If you're familiar with quality circles, it's plan, do, check, act is kind of the circle. Well, in design and construction, it's design, estimate, understand, and value engineer. And we work with your team and the design team to finally wring good value out of the project to get to the final scope and cost. And so there are some tools that we use to do that. You'll see very detailed early estimates from us, along with lists of value engineering ideas that can help to add value to the project, reduce cost, come up with maybe a different way to look at it. Once we get to the final scope and cost, then we'll be an advocate in the marketplace to promote your project. We did a brochure for the Ames High School project. We've actually done a Spark page for a project that we're taking out to promote for the Cedar Falls High School right now. So we're getting more innovative on ways to even be able to make your project attractive in the market. And that's really, really key. And I'll show you why in a second. There's also the architects do their work and they create specifications and drawings. We add a specification section there that delineates and maps all of the work in the project to specific scopes. So on bid day, when the bidders show up, they know exactly what they are bidding. Our lead estimator, Mark Cutchin, who's been keeping statistics on projects for a number of years, has plotted through our construction reporting service in our industry a dot on the map every week for public projects that have been bidding going back to 2014. And this takes out road projects and it takes out DOT and bridge projects. And you can see early in the year, there's a lot of projects that are bidding. And so any project that is out for bid then has a lot of competition in the marketplace for somebody's attention. In other words, if I'm a masonry contractor and I'm bidding work and I have the capacity to bid 2 projects a week, I have a lot to choose from out here. Later in the year, I have fewer to choose from. And so as an owner and as a school district, there's a case to make that, boy, if you can take a project to the market in November and December, you'll be more likely to get the interest of people because you'll have less competition in the market for others to want to pursue at that time. Ultimately, then, when bid day happens, we tabulate all of the bid results from all the bid package contractors. It's an open letting, it's an open process. It's very similar to what you would see in a general contractor scenario. There are just many bid package contractors that provide bids. And here's a snapshot of some recent results that we've had on projects that are somewhat like yours. During the construction phase, then, we're glad to show up and attend monthly board meetings attend board meetings on a monthly basis to provide an update. Some boards prefer that we do that. Others have us just report to a committee and a committee reports on our behalf and some documentation of progress that happens there. We also have a lean process and methodology on our sites that has weekly and every two-week meeting rhythms to keep things synchronized up. You'll get budget summaries. You'll get, if there are changes on the project, any documentation on that. We're really the first line of defense in vetting a change. If in fact there's one to be made, the architect then becomes a second line, and by the time it gets to you for your action, it's been thoroughly vetted. And this I could spend a lot of time on this, and I won't. I think the important thing here is that using the process that we have developed called Construction Production 2.0, it's a lean methodology that has a trailer devoted to planning and executing the project that anybody's welcome in from the district and the bid contractor to, we lay out the plan together and we execute together. And once you know what this looks like, it's really easy to understand the status of the project at any given time. It's very high touch and very low tech and really effective, except it's a little harder in a COVID time right now when we can't gather and assemble in the numbers that we would like, but nonetheless, you'll see this on every one of our sites, and I'd love to show it to you sooner rather than later if you have interest. And so how do CMs get reimbursed for their service? So between DLR and us, and then in working with Mitch and Julie, we laid out kind of an all schedule, a game plan for the execution of the project. And this is preliminary, but nonetheless, it's a place for us to start. So we find ourselves back here in November seeking to get a petition and some signatures. I know there's a committee that has been established to put a get up the vote effort together. So this really represents district work. DLR can, if you wish, to start some of their just preliminary programming and design work. No designing, just preparing to design while that happens. And they're prepared to do that if you wish. So once you get an affirmative vote on March 2nd, that's really when the design work can begin. And the blue lines indicate the phases of design that DLR would execute. The red lines indicate some of the estimating and pre-construction efforts. We'll have effort throughout, but there are milestone estimates that happen. This scenario then also indicates maybe having two bid issuances, a first bid issuance in October. That could be for some site development work, basically grading at this time of year, and any deep utility work that could happen, start then and ultimately shut down once the weather doesn't permit. But then have the second bid issuance, which would be the vast majority of the project here in early December of next year, trying to catch that window of minimal competition in the marketplace for your attention. So the construction lines indicate here, getting some site development work accomplished here prior to the weather setting in, and then really picking up with foundations to start then in the spring and have you in the summer of 2023. And so down below then is just the corresponding staffing that goes along with that. We'll have a pre-construction manager devoted really to tending this project through here. We also have a project manager, our project team, still a little early, but we have several people, and we have a couple of identified, a project manager and project superintendent that had worked on the Gilbert project and just recently completed that as the likely team, and they would plug into this too. So there would really be no missing a beat in the transition from pre-construction to construction. And so our proposal then is really based on a couple of assumptions: the amount of time that we'd be on site, and the overall budget. And this budget is just really derived from the DLR study up until now. So these totals are I'll say they're best estimates at this point. If we don't spend this much in pre-construction, you don't spend this much. During the construction phase, it's similar. The fee we propose is a 2.25% fee, and that will ultimately get calculated on the sum of the bid package contract. So again, it's just an estimate at this point. And so again, why would you do this? It's a cost shift. It's not an added service. It's not an extra. It's your opportunity as a public owner to make a decision to choose your leader, and also leverage some of your staff and board time to stay true to your educational mission and not have to over focus on this. We really become an extension of your team, and work on your behalf. You are solely our client that we serve in this process. So many districts have gone away, and many more are continuing to go this way to leverage industry experience when they need it, and then and not continue to hire it or have it on payroll when a project is complete. And with that, I will stop and take your questions.
Okay, thank you, Mike, for that presentation. One of the things that came up in our discussions was site safety, and the construction manager would be in charge of site safety to make sure that we run a safe project, and there's not so much underbidding done that safety becomes a concern. There's some construction sites you really don't want to be around. From a safety standpoint, I'm sure Mr. Pritchard here on the board has probably seen those, and I see the results of that sometimes. So that was the other issue. Mike, can you switch off this share and then go ahead and comment?
I can.
Okay.
So yeah, you mentioned that Iowa OSHA has a requirement that somebody on a site be the controlling contractor. And so when anybody is a construction manager, in this case, us, we are the controlling contractor. So we lead the site safety efforts. All of the bid package contractors have requirements to meet, but nonetheless, we're the ones keeping everybody in compliance. We also have a program that we've used quite successfully with Iowa OSHA, where we have them come on in a consulting capacity. Everybody knows they're coming, and the goal is for them to get access to the bid package contractors and observe their work and help them comply if they're out of compliance. And it's more of a teaching moment than an enforcement moment. And we use that program probably as much as anybody in the state, and provided that Iowa OSHA continues to provide that while we're working on your behalf, I'm sure that we'll have them there as well.
Okay. Reason Jeremy and I asked for this presentation tonight was for our other 3 board members who are a little bit newer on board, plus newer to the details of our construction plan, to be able to ask questions to Mike and pick his mind about any questions you have about this process. So I'll turn it over to those 3 board members. I'll start with you, Pat. Hope you're muted, Pat.
Sorry, thank you. It was already included in the construction costs. I think it is a wise idea to go with somebody else to manage the process. You can't expect Julie to do that, or Jeremy, or you, or me, or anybody else on the board to do that. So I think it makes sense. And again, if it's already part of the construction cost that we had talked about earlier, I think makes sense.
Okay. And no further questions, Pat. So therefore, I'll go over to Pam. Do you have any questions?
No, I basically concur with Pat. And the experience and expertise we're gaining here is valuable.
Okay. And Matt, thoughts, questions?
Yeah, a little out of my wheelhouse on the construction front. So going through all this information is kind of nice to hear that aspect, and having somebody on kind of our side of the table versus a general contractor that might not be. So again, construction front's out of my wheelhouse, and it all sounds like a great benefit to us as a district to have that front. So I guess no questions from me.
Okay. Jeremy, do you have any questions, comments?
I have one thing I hope Mike can clarify for me, and I guess it might depend on the way DLR framed their budget numbers, but do you think that 19.3 included some management costs from a general contractor?
It did. It would have, yes.
So, I mean, would it be logical to say that our construction budget is roughly that 19.3 million less your management fee for construction costs? So when you guys are figuring your percentages of under budget, is that how you're figuring them, or are you figuring them? I guess it probably depends on the architect also, but how do you figure the amount of times that you guys come in under budget, and where do those management fees come in? Because it gets a little bit, I think the hardest thing for people to understand is if you bid a project with a general contractor, the management fees are kind of behind the scenes, hidden with the general contractor. That's the way it's been done for a long time, and that's fine. But this way it brings them to the front, where everybody can see them, and it's all out there on the table. But if we leave those management fees in our budget, then we're basically adding a management fee on top of them, unless we come in under budget. Can you add some, shed some light on that? Am I thinking about that right?
Yeah, I think you are. And I think, so right now you have a preliminary study from DLR. I know you're still working to finalize your scope, maybe finalize your bond language. Ultimately, we'll parse out the budget that you establish for the project, and there'll be a DLR bucket, there'll be a CM bucket, there'll be a furnishings bucket, everything will be clearly bucketed, so that when we then compare what bid day looks like in comparison to the construction budget bucket, that's really the results that you're seeing there. So it's all one big bucket, but then we parse it out from there. And so it's, at this point, we wouldn't really compare it to anything, because right now they've just laid out sort of the big overall. We'll get into more detail with you and them to lay that out, so it's really clear what the construction number is, and we're not duplicated for sure.
No, that makes sense. Thank you. It's just when people see a fee like you're proposing, I mean, it's sticker shock for any normal person, right? I mean, that's a lot of money, but I think it's important to understand that there are fees in every project for management. Typically, a general contractor would manage all the subs. We're basically removing that general contractor in favor of, a construction manager managing those subs. My last question is, have you had any issues with districts holding all those contracts? Because that's the other thing I didn't fully understand was, whereas a general contractor would hold, there'd be one performance bond, right, for a general contractor versus 15 performance bonds or contracts that the district is now responsible for. I mean, does the extra liability cause any trouble for the district holding all of those, or what's your experience there?
So my experience says no. And there are a couple reasons for that. One, you're right. Each one of the bid package contractors has a bond that supports them. And so that's one level of protection. Secondly, we're active enough in this market and we work with these people day in and day out where they know what to expect from us, and we're really able to manage the project effectively on your behalf. If you didn't know it was a CM job, it might be a GC job, when you come to the site, you don't really notice any difference. On a monthly billing basis, we'll get everybody's applications for payment. We'll review them. DLR will review them as well, and we'll deliver them to your business office with a bow on them. And it ends up being 15 checks instead of one, but it's really no more or less rigorous than that. Oddly enough, if from time to time, and thankfully we haven't had it lately, but if a subcontractor is in trouble, we're able to get at it more quickly and help to identify that. And very often they're the ones that will say, hey, we're kind of in trouble here, and we can get in to help remedy that. Where a lot of times if it's buried 1 or 2 layers down below a general contractor, you might not know it, and that trouble can manifest itself in more of a problematic way. So ironically enough, we find these to be a little less dramaful that way than maybe some other projects.
All right, thank you. Last question, I promise. Like with the general contractor, there might be 3 or 4 packages, right? I mean, a general and a mechanical and electric or so forth. You're saying there might be 15 to 18 for our project. I've heard of other ones that have 30 packages. I mean, how do you break down the packages? And is there ever any worry that something slips through the cracks? A general would have to pick up anything that maybe gets missed or doesn't fall into a particular package. So how do you define the packages, the packages and the number of packages? And is there ever any instances where, package A says that should have been in package B and vice versa? So there's no one to take care of a task that needs to be taken care of.
Yeah, so I'll give you a philosophical answer, then a specific one. So a philosophical answer is that construction is a local business, and that's really true. And so we want to design the packages that will maximize their attractiveness to local people, be they in Boone, be they in Boone County, be they within surrounding counties. So we don't want to make them too big or too small or too unusual where that set of folks can't hunt. And so that's a driver. Secondly, from a sheer size perspective, we don't want to make it so big that it would put a burdensome strain on somebody's ability to provide a bond for it. That could be a real successful participant. Thirdly, we like to try and keep systems together. So we're not a big fan of buying material in one package and then having somebody else install that material in another. We like to keep those things together so that some CMs have 30, 40 packages like that. You'll very often see there's a lot of separation between material purchase and material install. We rarely do that. We try and keep them together, so that helps to eliminate some of that, some of the sizes or numbers of packages. Lastly, that bid package index that I had up earlier, that multi-scope description. So we have our team literally go through every specification section and map it to a specific bid package. And so it all gets delineated. I wouldn't say it's perfect, but it's about as near perfect. I rarely hear on any one of our projects where something is just completely omitted from a section or duplicated. I can't profess perfection, but it's pretty close. And so that effort on our team's part does a pretty good job of making sure that everything is counted once and not more than once.
Okay, any further questions?
I have one question, I guess, Mike. How many projects does you and your team work on at a time frame? I guess. I know it's kind of a broad question, but just thinking workload front.
Yeah, I would say about 12 to 15 at any given time.
How many of those, or do you guys act as the GC versus the CM?
I would say we're probably CMing about a third and then some form of GC on 2/3.
So just roughly, I mean, how many districts would you say how many, if you do a project as a CM for a district, how often are they to use your services again as a CM?
Good question. And thankfully quite often. We're probably on our fourth project down at Bondurant right now, probably on our second project down at Ballard, maybe third if you consider some derecho damage. Norwalk, we might be up to as many as a dozen. So a lot of it just really depends on the frequency with which districts have projects. Some we've done one and then we don't do it for another 10 years because they don't have projects to do. Here in the Ames district, when I was on the board, we did not serve in this capacity, but I was an advocate to hire a CM. So we hired a firm to help us with our elementaries, but then when it came to some of our district maintenance facilities, I suggested that we just hire a GC. So it's not every project all the time. It can vary based on circumstances.
Any other comments, concerns for Mr. Esper? Okay, hearing none. Mike, I appreciate you giving this presentation. I think it's helped out our board considerably in this process, and we'll be getting back in contact with you here in the next couple weeks here as we go along. Thank you very much and have a nice evening, Mike.
Great, thank you.
Okay, moving on. The Return to Learn plan update.
So
I'm going to start with Julie.
With our Return to Learn plan, when we initially developed that, we also developed metrics that would determine when we would be on site, when we would be in hybrid, and when we would go virtual. And since that time, we've gone a whole quarter where we've been on site, and we've learned a lot through that process. And so I just wanted to have the board have a conversation around if they would like to keep the metrics as they currently are, or if we need to accommodate some of the things that we've learned. So for example, in our Return to Learn metrics currently, if the community hits 15%, which we were at 13.6% today, if we were to hit 15%, we would go hybrid district-wide. What has happened since we first put this metric into place is that the state has also talked about how if at any point the district would want to go to virtual, that you need to have at least a 10% absentee rate to be able to apply for virtual services. And so our metrics do not currently take into consideration an absentee rate, nor do they take into consideration what the COVID rate would be within our district currently. Something that has also been enlightening to us, I think when this metric was developed, we fully anticipated that when the community would come to 15%, that our school district would be in similar fashion. And we've been pleasantly surprised that that has not been the case. And so in fact, I referenced the community is at 13.6%. Currently in our system, we're at 1.16%, significantly different than the community. So I'm looking for some guidance from the board as to how they would like to address the fact that we do not currently have absentee rates, nor do we have our COVID rates incorporated into whether we go hybrid or not. Also, I was just going to have you also explore if we were going to remain district-wide, or if we wanted to look by building or by level as well. That's something that we discussed at the very beginning of the year. And if we were to incorporate absentee rates, I can say that there are different rates of absenteeism by level currently in our system. District-wide, if we were to take the average, we were at 87% at, of the population that's on site were on site in class. Those that are not are mainly due to parents that have attained positive testing, and so their students are home with them and not in school. So it's not because they're ill, but it's because they have to quarantine from school. But when you look by level, Page, Lincoln, and Franklin are anywhere between 91% and 93% of the students are on site, but middle school and high school are 84% and 86%. So I think those are some things that I just wanted to be able to share with the board as to where we currently are with our data as we stand today. And again, like I just would like some direction from the board as to whether we want to tweak our metrics or not. The other thing that I want to mention is that if we were to continue to increase in the community, the state of Iowa has stated that they would approve virtual if we had 20% community spread as well as 10% absenteeism. The other piece to that is that when you go virtual, none of your activities can take place as well. So if the board, I'm looking for direction from the board as to when you would like to look at virtual, because you can apply to the state at 15%. They've been pretty clear that they likely are not going to approve it at 15%, but you have the ability to apply at 15%. But that would also mean, again, if we were to apply for a virtual status, then that also excludes any activities from being able to participate. So those are just some of the pieces that are coming into play right now. Last week, when area superintendents spoke, a lot of the school districts were not looking to change their on-site status despite being over 15% because of the low rate of positivity rates within the districts. Today, I see some larger school districts that have made some different moves, but so maybe our board meeting was at a good time to have this conversation. So those are just some of the pieces I wanted to throw out there for discussion by the board so that we have more direction as if in the event we continue to rise in the community.
Do we have any classes right now that are currently quarantining?
We do not have any classes that are currently quarantining.
None at the middle school or anything that have to go online?
No, we have middle school, a 7th grade basketball team, but I believe that are quarantining, not a class.
Got it. Okay, I heard something and I wanted to verify what that was. Thank you.
And we made the choice to quarantine the B team. We had a positive player that was on the B team, and so it only affected that team. So we quarantined 8 players from that group.
What's the rate amongst staff?
I'm sorry, the rate amongst what?
The rate amongst staff is, we've got 5 out currently. We also have 5 students out
Still under 2%
currently.
if you look only at staff.
Let me just put my public health hat on, and for those of you listening, I am also chairman of the department or the County Board of Health for Boone County. First, I'd like to commend our students and our staff for their great effort in this process. You walk around our schools, you'll see masks on 99+% of the time. The administration is reporting, I've seen too, is that before the administration can, or a teacher can tell the child to put their mask on, usually their classmates are already catching them and reminding them. So it's been great. I appreciate all the effort. People were concerned about elementary kids, kindergarten and first graders, but as Mrs. Sellers will attest, really has not been a problem at all. And I think us having that strong masking rate has probably prevented a lot of our problems. Now let's give you some statistics here from the Board of Health standpoint. Currently, our 14-day positivity rate is indeed 13.6. We are actually number 11 out of 99 counties for the lowest. As of today, there are 81 out of the 99 counties. We're over 15%. Story County, our neighbor, is at 14.8%. So they too are below that 15% threshold. If you look at our 14-day positivity, about 2 weeks ago, we were seeing about 8.5%. So it's been steadily climbing. There's two different websites one can go to. There's the state site that State Department of Public Health uses, which is where we're getting these numbers. There's also a site called iowacovid19tracker.org. They track things a little bit differently. They actually use a 14-day, whereas the state is actually using more of a 12-day. If you want to get into the statistics of it, you can go to the Iowa COVID-19 tracker, and they'll explain all the details for those of you who are statistically like numbers. But a week ago, in our positivity rate in Boone County for 14 days, 30.45 according to that one. A month ago, it was 11.51. This is the Iowa COVID-19 tracker, and it's always been about double of what the other one has been. For 24-hour positivity rates, they're running between 40-45%. So it's definitely on the upsurge. Whereas that same thing 6 weeks ago was about 20%. So it's definitely going up. Now, I will say the hybrid model is probably not as much as we're thinking good, in that kids whom are their day at home, we don't know what they're doing. We had a neighboring school district do that for about 2 weeks' time because of the high positivity rate for the middle school and high school. I talked to a couple of the kids, and they said, well, the day that we were at home and we're supposed to be on the computer signed in, you could see in the background there were 3 or 4 kids in the same house, none of them having masks on. So is it any safer for us to get our 6 feet distance for one day, but on the other day, having our 0 foot distance and 1 foot distance and no masks? So that's something we have to look at. And do we even want to have that hybrid component in there? Or do we want to just say the way it is versus totally online? Tonight, as I was leaving, there was a caption for 9 o'clock, I think it was 9 o'clock news on Fox or 10 o'clock on WHO. They said that the Marshalltown superintendent was going to be talking, and one of his points was going to be that kids during this epidemic are safer in school than they are at home, even with a high 14-day positivity rate. And so all of you know that superintendent is Theron Chudy, who used to be here. And just a little FYI, when his wife was here in Boone, she was our infection control nurse at the hospital. So she's got some expertise in this area that I'm sure he's using. So that all being said, my first question to Mr. Byam and Mr. Kelly and to Ms. Tripa is, the middle school and high school have some higher absentee rates now. Historically, has middle school and high school run a little bit higher absentee rates than the elementary, or has it been pretty consistent and this is an aberrancy?
I would say historically for this year, for the first quarter, the absentee rates are higher than the elementary.
The middle school and high school have been higher. Okay. And how about previous years? Chris, Scott, can you, Brad, Autumn, can you guys, maybe Jill, you remember some?
We consistently ran at about 95%.
thought it was 93 when we looked at it historically, but close. Yeah, somewhere.
And it was pretty uniform. And was it pretty uniform between all 4 buildings in past years?
I can't recall whether or not the other schools were pretty close, but I know that we fluctuated up to 96% down to just under 95. So we've been pretty consistent over the 7 years that I've been here.
Okay, and Mr. Winters, you've been here a couple years. What have you guys been the first 2 years?
I don't know. I can't tell you. Sorry.
Okay. Autumn, you're online here. I think I saw you earlier.
Yeah, I mean, I would say ours fluctuate pretty with the cold season anyway. My little buddies, although I would say actually they've been healthy this year and normal, but we still have the fluctuation. I mean, I don't have a percentage of what's average and what's not, but I would say the most of these are quarantining from their parents if they aren't ill. So.
Okay. I'll open it up to further discussion from other board members.
Well, considering that the numbers are going up statewide all around, I know we have to follow what the state says with the 10% of students and the 15% in the county, but I would not want to change anything else other than that. I mean, follow those state guidelines. I don't want to go any lesser than that in any way, shape, or form. Even though Boone County might be doing better than some other counties, it's going to catch us. I mean, the flu season has started, and we had over 4,500 a couple days ago. We were 4,200 yesterday in the state. That's huge. That's a lot more than we had when we originally set this number up to begin with. So I'm not in favor of making any major changes.
So Pat, can I just clarify? So are you saying that you would like us to maintain our current metrics and not include anything with regard to our district data and only look at the community data to go to hybrid, or would you like us to incorporate our student data with
if
that?
The state will not allow us to do anything until we have at least 10%. We should probably incorporate what the state says, I guess.
Okay.
But that would be the maximum that I'd be willing to go.
Mm-hmm.
This is Pam. I think one of the biggest confusions looking at that dashboard is that you get a number of people who've tested positive for COVID. You get a number of people who supposedly are quarantined, or but you never know for sure how many kids are absent. To hear tonight that our absentee rate at the high school and the middle school are 14 and 16%, you don't get that kind of information. And my biggest concern are those kids. So if your mom and dad are sick and you're home quarantined, but you're not testing positive, you're not going to be on that metric, but you're not going to be at school either. Do those kids have access to online?
Yes. So anyone who quarantines has access to their online instruction. That has been completely dependent on who takes advantage of that, quite honestly, Pam, and who doesn't. But that is something they're transitioned immediately if they're quarantined to online instruction. So they're not missing out on that instruction unless they self-impose that measure. And we can certainly add the absentee rate to our metrics. I think the other confusion with the metrics is we include everyone who has symptoms that could be COVID. So they may or may not be COVID related. So there are some symptoms that might be strep related. And until we have something that specifically tells us it's not COVID, they're on the list as being symptomatic with COVID symptoms. So there are times when we receive word from families that they have another diagnosis, then they will come off the list, and then those numbers change. But if we do not receive notice from those families, then they stay on, because if you recall, we are calling all of their quarantine students, whether the public health quarantines due to a family exposure or a school exposure, regardless, they are getting called on day I'm trying to remember, 7 and 13.
Yeah.
On day 7 and day 13, we're checking in with every single family that has students that are quarantining. And I do not know of a district that's doing that besides us, quite honestly. So I feel like we have a really good handle on our district statistics, better than anyone else. So I'm totally fine with adding the absentee rate. The thing that I want people to understand is if we add that the absentee rate also includes people who choose to take vacation, who might be gone for bereavement. That absentee rate does not mean that they're sick. It just means they're not in school.
An example of those numbers, Pam, would be like, with what we just quarantined from that basketball team, like earlier in the year, when we did that with football to try and control any spread, we made the choice to eliminate the whole B team because they've practiced together, they've played together. While none of them are sick, that throws 9 people into a metric where that's a number that's staying at home. So you wouldn't see that number because they're quarantined with no symptoms, because we chose to be proactive because they had been in that setting, and you can't really control, how much exposure did they have during practice, during that basketball game, who they sat by on the sidelines when they had their mask on, when they didn't have it on. And so, just an example of that, we had, I want to say 26 students quarantined over 3 positive cases. And you don't see those numbers because we are being proactive with those students and putting them online to give them online instruction to really just to be safe.
So they're not even counted in your absentees, which is good.
Wait.
Well, they're currently not. I mean, they're not showing up in the data when we look at how many are symptomatic or out with symptoms. If we were to include our absentee rate, then they would be, because they are not sitting physically in our schools. So I think that's.
But are they absent? Are they absent if they're online? They're not. They're not absent if they are online. So you can't count them as absentee. It would not be part of your absentee rate, because they're online. Even though they were originally face-to-face, they're still going to school.
I think we have to remember that some of them may not be able to be going to school. We provide them the option to, we provide them the access to the online learning, but the family didn't choose to have that happen and choose to be out. And so depending on the family circumstances, they may not be able to take part in that, and they may actually be out and absent. So,
and how many of those
encourage
do we
them,
have?
but we can't.
I can't imagine that's very many. Is that very many that do that don't go online?
Principals?
I'd say not very many of those at the high school would be, if they go quarantine, we get them online if they can.
Some of the struggle we ran into, though, is the completion of online work once we get them into the online program.
So something else that other districts that have gone hybrid for a fairly lengthy point of time, and those that have gone to it for 4 to 6 weeks, something that they have really struggled with are those times when they are offsite with regard to the learning. So they have really struggled to keep them engaged, whether it was synchronous or asynchronous. So that's just something that we're learning from some of our neighbors that have been in that position where we've been blessed to be on site every day. We haven't had that same level of experience. And so those are some of the things we're hearing from some of our colleagues across the state that have been in hybrid mode for quite some time. So that's something that can present a challenge.
I would remind people too that when we did our FAST, report on our FAST testing last month, there was a little bit of a decrease from those of our kids who were 100% online compared to our kids who were in the classroom, in the seat every day. So, and I'm kind of afraid that.
I didn't think we had that. Because I think we asked about the difference between online and face-to-face, and at that time they didn't have it.
We did go back and review that data after that board meeting, and it really varied by class and grade level. And we have to remember it's fall data. So it's, which kids ended up in which class to begin with or which model. I think it's hard to right now to be able to tie that initial fall score to the delivery model, just because it's just the initial as they walked in the door this fall. So some classes were a little lower in the remote section than some of the on-site sections, but not all. That's just kind of hard to sort out with fall. By winter data, we may have a little bit more to gauge there.
I think at the elementary level, didn't we talk about the challenge in ensuring the consistency of testing?
Yeah,
for
we did talk
online
about that too. Yeah. So it's hard to tell right now which way we're going to do. I think if we're going to put the total absentee rate, we need to have some type of an explanation if we're going to add that onto our graphic, because it might get.
So would it be fair to say that the board members currently would want us to respond by level, not necessarily by district, if our absentee rates are not as high in some places than they are in others? As you can, I think as you've seen across the state, some of our colleagues have done that where they go hybrid at the secondary level before they go hybrid as a district. I'm curious as to where our board stands with regard to looking at the data in that fashion.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Julie, because that gives us a much more flexible ability to analyze what's really going on. 98% of our elementary kids are here and not in our, not experiencing illness related to COVID-19.
And I would agree.
That really clarifies. Yeah, I think the more clear the data, the better.
I would agree that it would not necessarily need to be district-wide, but building level possibly.
I still have the concern as far as the hybrid in general. I'm just worried that it's the devil you know versus the devil you don't know right now. As far as having a bunch of kids, we really, as of a couple of weeks ago, last time I looked at the numbers, we've not been able to tie any cases directly to attendance in school when they do the contact tracing back. That is, all the cases we've seen in the school district, both faculty and students at this time, have been tied to either family or other non-school related activities. That's not to say that there are no cases that have been from school contact in other districts. So there have been, but unfortunately, with our masking and everything our teachers are doing as far as keeping the rooms clean, our janitors and maintenance personnel coming in doing the sterile deep cleans much more frequently. We've been able to avoid that, which is one thing that makes one sleep better at night, although you never know, it just takes one or two bad exposures. But that's for anyone, any place we work, it just takes one or two bad exposures. Be it at Fairway and the plumbing and heating business, and I'm probably one of the highest risk people for exposure here for my job. So we just have to keep moving on.
I guess I'm just still at the point that unless it happens, I don't want to make the change yet. We might need that. We might need that hybrid for some reason. So let's not just throw it out completely at this point. But we continue to discuss it at our meetings and see where people are every time we have a meeting, and go from there. That would be my recommendation.
Julie, what's been that quarter? How many kids went to online versus how many came back? What was the net change there?
We did not have a huge net change like we anticipated. I'm going to lean on the principals to give accurate numbers, but we had anticipated almost 3/4 of our students coming back, and that did not happen.
Okay.
We had 4 to 5 per grade level at Franklin.
We had 26 return at the high school.
We had 5 come back on site.
And we had 22 return at middle school. It's about 5 per grade.
The problem that I have with hybrid is that we're going to force our older students into a community that has a high rate of spread, and we're going to force our younger kids to probably grandparents that are at higher risk. It seems like school is the safest place for most of our kids. We've got some friends in Ames that have had their kids on hybrid, and it's almost devastating for families trying to navigate these hybrid models. It seems like the best two options are virtual or fully on site. The hybrid model seems to expose our kids more, in my opinion, and it makes it very, very difficult for families. From the anecdotal evidence that I've collected based on talking to people, and not scientific at all, but that's the problem that I have with it.
In our state, Waukee stated that they were going to either be on-site or virtual. That's something that Waukee talked about from the beginning. So that's another district that has taken that stance. And I know some are talking about that as well, trying to weigh the pros and cons of hybrid. And again, I think everyone's trying to make sure we're making the safest decision for our staff and our students. And that's the tricky part, is there doesn't seem to be a great right answer to all of this, but that's what we're trying to do, is make sure that we learn from the quarter that we've had being on site, and learn from others that have had to go to hybrid, and try and use that information. So the last thing that I heard from you as a board is that you really would like us to have it be board action before we do that, before we would move to a different model, because being at 13.6% in the community, and if we look at 10% at a level, I could see that there's potential for us to be at 15% in the community before the end of the week. And some of our levels are at that 10% absentee rate. Not counting it necessarily in the same manner, Pat, that you had referenced, but in reference to the state, they said we shouldn't care what kind of absence, that it should just be absence, period. So I'm just looking to know whether we need to call a special board meeting before we take action, or if you have a specific way that you want us to look at the data, that we would take action when that happens as a district.
I'm also wondering if it isn't time for another parent and staff survey to see how the community and the staff is feeling about the current environment, whether they feel safe, whether they would prefer to maybe limit it to two options on site or virtual, or if they really like the hybrid model. It might be worth reaching out and seeing what kind of data we can collect there.
We did have good success with the surveys this summer. I think parents were very happy that we did give them some input into this process. It's not a clear, easy decision. I think we've done the best to provide our education for the first quarter. Our kids got one more quarter face-to-face than a lot of kids in this state did. And I have overall, I've heard very few negatives about what the school has been doing. In fact, most people have complimented me and the school district for what we have done so far. I think you also have to remember that if we go hybrid or totally online, all of our competition.
That you'd like us to put into the survey that we would put out to staff and families. I want to make sure that the survey is reflective of the information you're looking for.
Julie, are the requirements still that you can, when you apply for the online waiver, it's still for 2 weeks at a time? You can't just go to online model?
Correct. Yeah, so the requirements from the state perspective, even when you get to the point that the community is over 20% and you have 10% absenteeism, your applications for a 2-week time frame, you are not able to apply for any time beyond that. You apply every 2 weeks, so that it is consistent with tracking data.
I'd like to ask Scott to go back and review what happened in 8th grade and how successful that was, or how, how did the kids respond to that?
One of the things that we talked about was, of course, we'd like to take the credit for, jumping early, and I guess not really jumping early, but making the decision to close down some activities and go to hybrid for one grade level and not affect the rest of the district. because it did turn around and we were able to come back and just during that 2-week time frame put us in a pretty good spot. You know, did it just happen to be that things were coming around and looking good, or did the mitigation strategies that we chose to put in place, you know, work? I think it's probably a combination of both. And so, you know, I also like the idea of, I see a lot of districts and students and have friends in different models that are getting, you know, learning 1 day a week, learning 2 days a week. And so I like the way that we've done it. I like the way that we've been able to isolate it, you know, even if it's to a grade level, even versus a whole building. I think the less people, the more people we can keep at school, and the less people we put in that situation, I think is beneficial for the students and everyone involved. So I like having that flexibility.
Kind of just want to jump in a little comment here on this too of in talking with some parents and stuff in the district here. I think so many households are both parents working these days that it gets to be a struggle jumping into the hybrid. And I think it was discussed about they get put on grandparents or go to another friend's house or something where we can't monitor what the kids are doing. I think the numbers have shown within our district, we've done a phenomenal job with the measures we put in place to make everybody as safe as can be at the school. That I think kind of based on Julie's comment of we could very well hit that 15% before the end of the week, that I'm wondering if there needs to be a discussion or a motion of some sort tonight to change that before we have the survey go out, because it could very well change before the parents even get the survey. And I just think with the hybrid model, it's going to be a struggle on more families than I think it's going to benefit. So that's, I guess, my comments on this is I wouldn't be against us getting rid of the hybrid model and doing a fully on-site or an all online model.
I'll just say from a public health spend.
Well, if we go to that, it's in a 2-week increment. And if, you know, isolating kids for that long could be very helpful. And I would like to say even to keep it flexible enough, if we do not need that at the K4 level, then we don't do it at the K4 level or K6 or whatever. I think keeping it flexible, keeping it grade identified or building identified helps.
From a public health standpoint, I'd be shocked if we don't hit 15% before it starts going back down. Just looking at the numbers each day for the last week, I don't see any way that number isn't going to do anything but get up to the 18 to 20% range for here. And the state of Iowa is just continuing to go up to, I said, we're number 11 out of 99 now. And I suspect all those schools or all those counties, except maybe one, the one that's sitting down there at 8.6% yet, are probably going to hit the 15% at some point.
Well, I guess I'm comfortable doing away with the hybrid if people realize that there may be a lot of people doing completely online. Because if the numbers do continue to rise and we do have more students out, there's going to be a lot more students online. And are the teachers ready for that?
Yeah.
So that's just, you know, I mean, hybrid's different because they can still see those students on a regular basis. They're not going to see some of these students if our numbers keep going up, like Brian's saying that they will, and we know that they're going to. So that's my only concern is everybody ready for completely online, because that's what's going to happen for a lot of students.
I think you have to remember that when we started the school year, that was kind of the alternative, was that to be able to flip the switch and go from one to the other in consecutive days. Now, the other thing that we have on this last spring when we were doing this, the learning was not mandatory, the attendance was not being taken, several other things. Whereas if we have to flip the switch to online this time, attendance will still be taken and everything will just be in the classroom. The classroom will just be moved onto a virtual classroom. All the kids are going to be there. And if they're not there, it's just like right now when the kids are fully online, they don't sign in for 5 or 6 days time, we're starting to pursue attendance issues and even truancy issues based on not turning on the computer. So,
Well, at the K currently though, we only have, not every teacher is teaching online. Is that correct, Julie? Not every teacher is. I mean, we've got a second grade teacher, we've got a third grade teacher, right, teaching online. So more teachers will have to switch to that. And my question is, are they ready?
That's a good question, Pat. Good question.
I was just going to say, you know, with that, we've had a quarter of learning of what works and what doesn't. And so I think that's what makes me a little nervous in throwing a plan out. We don't have a third, fourth, fifth idea in place. Right now, we're not necessarily taking students that want to move to all online. Our intent has they can come back if they chose it, but we're not going the other way. And if all of a sudden we throw out a plan and say, okay, no possibility of hybrid this, and all of a sudden we have people want to jump the other way, I'll just tell you right now, we can't manage those numbers. I think we found that what we thought we could do, if we have to go all online, we're kind of coming up with a plan B, because the numbers that we have right now, you know, you can manage a class size of students, but as we've seen in first quarter, when those numbers get up to 40, 50, 60 in one section, it's not manageable. And so to be able to come up with the staff and the staffing and the number of teachers that you would have to move, that would be a difficult task, I would think, at any grade level. So, Brad was just going to say something, but I don't know how that ties into. I know we've got a lot of different learning of what's been successful and what's not, and hadn't had intentions to open it back up to have a whole bunch of people then rejoin those online classes to blow them up.
I was going to just
my
share that.
concern.
I'm sorry, Pat.
Sorry, I interrupted. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to share that I struggle to say that we are going to hold kids accountable for being online at the same times of day if we move to an online model, because I think of our elementary students specifically who have two parents who are still working and need to work. They may not have the support that they need to have someone there with them to be online. You know, the reason it's been successful, I think, is because our families who chose online chose that because they knew that they had that support and they knew they could have students there online. If we force families to go online, and by force, I mean saying that that's the option we have, it's going to be much more difficult to hold them accountable for being online at certain times of the day, especially at the elementary level.
But if you do the hybrid method, you're going to have that same type of problem with the parents every other day.
Agreed. We would see them every other day, though. At least we would know, or we would have a captive audience every other day.
I think one of the problems that I have with this discussion is that by everybody's standards, the Boone Community School Districts have been overwhelmingly successful in how we've managed this. The kids are safe, in my opinion, in the school, irregardless of what's happening in the community. I would argue that our district, with some of the things that we've implemented, have the best in-house metrics around. So I think that the case could be made that we should rely on those as opposed to community numbers. That may be a discussion, I don't know, but that may alleviate some of this just because of how successful we've been here. I mean, maybe we could look at relying solely on our metrics as opposed to community metrics to make those kinds of decisions.
Yeah, it's hard, Jeremy. The state metrics are, I mean, it's, 1 month ago on October 10th, the running total for a whole week of new cases was about 6,500. Last Saturday, it was 21,034. I mean, and that is the statewide number. That's an alarming thing, but I think we have to look at our numbers. I think you're right. We have to look at our numbers and make our decisions based on that. and it's still very hard. So I'm still for flexibility in decision-making so that we have the most kids in school as possible.
Right. But I mean, it's a very real possibility that our internal rates remain the same, maybe increase slightly, and we hit the 15%, and we're forced to go to virtual or hybrid when we're the same as we were last week that we've been very successful with. I mean, we know it's best for our kids to be in school, so I'm not sure that 15% mark should distinguish whether our kids are in school or not. I think what's happening in-house, well, that we know better than anybody should determine whether the kids are in school or at home in school or hybrid model. Yeah. But what those rates are, I don't know. I don't know what to set those at or how we should view that. Obviously, they'd be very different than the 15%, but how to determine that is another question.
I would agree the 15%, the 14-day rolling average. I don't put a whole lot of stake in it. I don't feel comfortable with our school district, our board, using just that number. As I was telling you before, there's a couple different ways to calculate that 14-day positivity. And a lot of, as I say, statistics don't lie, statisticians do. I personally trust the numbers that we are producing locally the best. And that is the numbers that Julie and Mitch are producing on a daily basis. And I'm going to get more worried, to be honest with you. I think the biggest problem we're going to have, if anything, is we're going to start having problems with teacher absentee. I think that's what's going to trigger us to do something first, more than any other statistic. Is going to be the number of available teachers that we have, because I think that's the number that's going to go up first, because those teachers are out in the community. The student average, I think, is still going to stay fairly low for an more extended period, and for us to just use one scale that the state produced or whoever and base it on that and not look at what our students have going and what we were doing for our students. I'm not overly comfortable, especially that 14-day positivity number. If you look, 81 counties have trip positive for that, but there's very few of them, I'd say less than a dozen from last I saw, that are attempting to get to go totally online. And even at the 20% rate, which is supposedly where the governor is going to guarantee it more, you still have, I'm just looking it up right now, Des Moines County and Marshall County are both at 20 and 20.3%. And it looks like you still have over, I'd say 30 counties, just roughly, that are over that 20%, but not all of them are requesting to go online.
So are we comfortable with our 2.5% number that we had prior to, when we look at the metrics? We actually have a caveat in there about if we have a shortage of teachers or need shortage of guest teachers, that we might have to flip into some different model. That's already in our metric and in our return to learn plan. Are we saying that instead of stopping that green line at the 15%, that we're saying if we can stay under 2.5% in our district, that we should stay on site? Is that what we're saying? And carry that out instead of stopping it at that 15% community spread? If any of you are looking at our current metrics, we kind of stopped that district metric once we hit 15%. And I think what I'm hearing all of you say is that you want to incorporate something from our district to help guide that decision making, and then maybe in the meantime be able to still send out those surveys to our staff and our community, asking for their input as well. Is that where we are? Because if you're,
and it sounded to me like from Scott and Brad that they want to retain the option to do hybrid. if
Yeah.
I'm correct. Was that correct, Scott? Brad? You
Yeah,
wanted to
you know, I
take the
think,
favorite
I
option?
think, I think in an isolated situation, you know, rather than throwing everybody into it, if it could, if it was one grade level or one building instead of the whole community, you have less shortage of teachers that you're going to need or people that need daycare if you're affecting less people and can do it for short term. And I know that our teachers did an amazing job during that time, and the kids got great instruction, and the kids really liked it with the amount of attention that they got, just based on those reduced numbers in classes. And the teachers were really able to make a lot of progress with those numbers, even while only seeing them every other day. The teachers did an amazing job, and the kids did a good job with it. So, you know, we followed that metric. You know, when we were approaching it, we met. It's a hard decision to do that, but I think that was the right thing to do at that point for one grade level, and we didn't jump to a decision for the whole building. So I know that's a big district decision, but I like that flexibility. It seems to make sense.
So I just want to be clear, make sure I'm understanding, because I definitely heard what, you know, he's saying. They want the ability to be flexible, to monitor our data and do that. I guess that's what I'm saying is right now, the way our metrics state, it's an automatic, everyone goes to hybrid. So I want to make sure that our metric actually reflects what we're discussing tonight, so that we don't have people who misunderstand, say 2-3 days from now, when our county goes above 15%, which is what I'm hearing will happen. I want to make sure we're being very accurate in what we're sharing with our community as to what will occur from the school district's perspective. So right now, as it stands, we would go hybrid district-wide when the community hit 15%. That is not what I'm hearing tonight. So I would just like our board to have a more motion on how we would alter that metric to be reflective of what we discussed tonight, so that we can change that and make sure that it's reflective of the desire to be flexible based on our own district data.
I like the way you stated that. Can I just say so moved?
So let me see if I can put this into basically, Julie, what you said was that the fully on-site green line will extend all the way across from the 15 to 20% box, and then the 20 to 20 plus percent. That will all go straight across with that green line.
That's my question. Does that reflect the discussion tonight?
So we're looking at more, so we got something locally the entire way, as opposed to just a drop dead 15% automatic. And that still leaves the hybrid option for individual situations. And then if we're over that 2.5%, then it's time to sit down and have another conversation about what we're doing. Pat, does that explain it for you?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
Retaining
now
the hybrid option, looking at individual district data, instead of just 15% county or whatever, countywide or citywide, but that we look at district data.
Yep, exactly. Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay, so it's been moved by Ms. Stevens, seconded by Mr. Pritchard, that looking at our school mile decision-making metric, the green line for fully on-site from 0 to 2.4% COVID absentee rate will extend all the way across the entire table. Further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay? That motion passes unanimously. And I guess that gives you some guidance, Julie, as far as right now. And then My thought is if we start pushing that 2.5%, we probably need to convene a special meeting of the board to discuss what we're going to do after that. If we can look at at that point in time, we'll look and see if there are ways there's just certain classes that we can, there's certain areas that we can go either hybrid for short periods of time, like Mr. Kelly and Mr. Winter talking about, or if it's just a few, and we feel that we need to go all the way online. In the meantime, we keep working on what that total online would look like.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Can I just ask one question? When we did that with the 8th grade, we didn't convene a special board meeting. We just were looking at the data and weighing that against our decision-making metrics. So if we did have a grade level or building, I just want to clarify, do we want to make sure that we have a board meeting for that, or do we want to?
No, if you can clarify it down to one class, they can clarify it down to one class. I would say no, but if it's looking to a point where we're going to have to do multiple classes, or that we don't see a way to get around it that way, then I think we need to have a board meeting.
Plus the distinction might be that district-wide, we weren't close to the 2.5. So, I mean, if we're getting to the 2.5, it probably worthy of a board meeting. If there's one class, then I think that's a decision that the administration can make.
Or even one building. Or do you want a board meeting for a building?
I think we want a building. If a building shuts down, we want to have a board meeting.
Okay.
I think so.
That's helpful.
Teachers, it will be great. And the burden we will place on parents will be great.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yep. Yeah, and you're gonna have parents and teachers on both sides on that issue too. So you go to the building at level.
I think this reinforces the need for really consistent effort to mitigate using the strategies that we've been using. I think it's very important, that we try to social distance. There are places where 6 feet isn't possible, and that makes the use of masks very important. It's a serious attitude about that, very important. Small group work is questionable then. Keeping those cohorts intact, if there are cohorts in every building, keeping that, very consistent. Consistency is going to be a key here.
I would agree. The staff and our students have done an amazing job so far. I hope they continue to do that amazing job and we don't have to have another special meeting. Because we're doing some things right here. We just have to keep doing it and hope that the rest of the community and the rest of the county will come around with the masking issues and proper social distancing. Avoiding large gatherings, especially Thanksgiving. Sorry, folks. Thanksgiving dinners might look a little bit smaller this year to be safe. So, okay, let's move on to the next topic, and that is the early retirement incentive.
Sure. So Pam had asked that we visit this as a board with regard to the early retirement incentive. I believe we have 16 individuals that are eligible for early retirement. And I believe your board previously had talked about how this is not necessarily an every year kind of endeavor, and that you want to ensure that you are truly seeing some savings out of it. Mitch and I also had looked at our budget to see if we would be able to put enough into management to sustain an early retirement incentive if the board were to decide to do that. And we could do that this year if the board decides that, but I think it would be crucial that we be able to see some savings from that if that's the direction we go. And I think it would be worthy of the conversation of whether that savings would be able to be reaped in this particular situation or not, because every district's a little different as to whether they've been able to do that. But we can afford to do that if that's the direction the board would like to go.
Guess
Hey,
I'm
Mitch.
curious. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask Mitch if we offer it this year, is there a chance that the management fund levy will increase in the next 2 to 3 years?
It could, but we have a healthy balance in that account. We'll be about 500,000-600,000 at the end of the year.
So it's not a major concern that that levy would increase during our construction project potentially?
No.
Okay, thank you.
My question was how many not that I want to base it on this, but do we have a lot of hard to fill positions that would be difficult to replace the teachers if they retired early?
Give me 2 seconds. We have a couple title teachers. We have a couple high school, elementary. What do you think, Julie? It's kind of across the board on what we have open.
There are some that are difficult to fill, some that are not. It's not a clear statement with regard to that when I look at the list.
Thank you. I just don't want to be caught short.
Did we offer this last year?
We did, and we had 3 or 4 people take it.
And how many people were eligible last year? Do you recall?
About the same amount.
So it's when people are eligible, it's a popular option.
Yeah.
I mean, we could potentially lose. I mean, the upside is offering an incentive to people, especially after a very stressful year. But the downside is potentially losing 15 of our best teachers.
Yeah, that's a risk, but realistically, I don't think all of them would.
So what you said, Mitch, was last year there was about the same number that could go, and we
Yep.
had 4.
Let me pull up how many actually left or how many actually took it. You're on mute.
I'm sorry. In previous years, the board has set a limit and then has said that the board and administration has discretion as far as which can go based on being able to fill positions. But I believe we did it 2 years ago too, if my mind serves me right. And I think the last board just set their decision that time was to do it this previous year, but then to state that they would not be doing it this year was what the board had stated. And I've been on this board for 7 years, and every year I hear this statement that we are going to be able to make cost reductions based on the salary differential. And every year, unfortunately, we don't see that come to fruition as much as what always gets predicted to us. So I guess I'm a little bit hesitant. The fact that we've done it 2 years in a row, are we setting a precedence that teachers will expect it every year? It kind of defeats the purpose somewhat. And going back to what the last board had stated, and especially when Mr. Lewis tells us that there was a high percentage of people that applied for it.
We had 4 people take it last year.
4 out of how many, Mitch? 15?
To be able to retire off of IPERS, it was about 16, 17.
Okay, and 4 took. So I don't see that as a
okay.
high.
So it's 4 out of 16. Okay.
Yes, I don't
Okay.
see that as a high percentage, and that was the previous year as well. But
year-
I will say that I would offer it every year, as long as we were financially stable like we are. So that's my.
The
Okay.
17, 18, it would have been the last time we did it before, the one that just retired. We had probably 12 employees that took it then. So this year, we're only having 4. Last year that just retired. So we really gone down quite a bit.
But because this is a stressful year, we don't know how many would take it this year,
Right.
those 16 that are available, because it is a stressful year on everybody. So I don't know.
So something that I would share is that Iowa Association of School Boards would recommend that districts not necessarily do it every year, because sometimes you can be surprised and not be able to offer it. And the last thing you want to do is have people plan as if it's available and not be able to take advantage of that opportunity. And I have unfortunately been in a situation such as that. And it's really, really sad for employees who had planned on being able to do that and then are unable to because the district isn't able to afford it as they expected. So Iowa Association of School Boards would actually recommend that it not be specifically in board policy, which it's not, but also not necessarily be a given that the board, every board would be very specific as to when it would be offered or not offered. So, or make it a yearly decision so that people aren't planning to retire and then suddenly are not able to. So that's, I would just want, I don't want to mislead any of our faculty inadvertently. So that would be my only caution.
Well, and I understand that, Julie, because our policy is very specific about it. It is a yearly decision. It isn't a given. And I think our staff understands that it isn't a given.
Right.
I kind of consider all of the extenuating circumstances from, you know, this current year. I just thought it would be an option that some people might welcome. And whether they will or not, we don't know.
I would agree with Pam on that one. I think if we're in a situation as a district of able to do it this year, I think this is a good year to offer that.
As the policy current states, they have to have their paperwork submitted with their resignation letter to the superintendent's office by December 1st. So next month, you guys would make the action to approve those if you do pass this tonight.
Mitch, in the past years, do we have the language as far as setting a top number and some other restrictions? It seems like there have been, as far as the total number of retirees, like we only would accept like up to 8 or something like that.
I'd have to look at the board policy for that.
I think last time we did 10.
The 10,
I did have, I don't know, a question for me, and I think this is where it gets confusing, like Julie said, of who's expecting it and when they expect it. And I don't think we said we would approve it. I think that the conversation was we would actually look at it every other year and determine if we would offer it or if not. But I think sometimes looking at it every year has turned into the possibility of offering it every year. So I did have some staff ask me if, and I guess I don't even know what the year would be, but you almost have to set like, we're going to look at it every even year. And then if you look at it and so say this year is an odd year, does this become the year that you go every other year, or then do you look at it again the following year? Because some staff had said like, well, maybe weren't considering it this year, but thinking that they were going to look at it next year since they offered it last year. And so does looking at it in an odd year change the cycle of when the board looks at it? Does that make sense?
if we do it 2 years in a row, you're saying then the following you're not doing it.
That's the question they had for me, is if we offered it last year and looked at it again this year, which we maybe weren't going to, but because of COVID we did, is there the chance that it would be looked at it again next year when we were, based on that cycle that we set, does that remain the cycle or does the cycle change?
I think we need to read the board policy.
Board policy doesn't dictate that it's every other year.
Yeah.
The board, it says the board reserves the right to make any adjustments to the policy based on the request and the funding available. So it's pretty much up to this board decision.
I tend to be conservative on these things, especially when we're looking at a bond in a construction project. I know Mitch said that fund is healthy, but if we had a huge increase in the number of people that wanted to retire early this year, and we did, for unforeseen reasons, have to change the levy, I mean, that would defeat the whole purpose of running a levy neutral bond campaign, just because any increase at all from the school would be viewed as an increase due to the construction project. That's the only justification that I can have, is being ultra conservative, because the priority for me right now is getting an elementary school built. And this could potentially, although it looks like an unrealistic chance or a far off chance, this could have some negative impact on that potentially.
Mitch, is the eligible list 20 years of service? That's not based on they've met the rule of 88.
They have to meet the rule of 74. So that is 74. They have to be 15 years at Boone and at least be 55. The rule of 77 is their age and their years of service.
Jeremy, can you clarify for me? I couldn't tell if you were saying it was a bad idea to keep it or a bad idea to not keep it. I wasn't quite sure.
Sure. Yep. The management is a levy, correct? Management fund is levied for. So if we depleted our management fund and we had to levy for funds to replenish that, it would increase the taxes the school had to collect. And if we collect those taxes, even if our debt service levy does not increase the community, which we're selling currently as a debt, a levy neutral bond project, would view that as an increase because of the construction project, because that's the easiest thing to point your finger at. Even though that's a long shot, it would really hamper our effort, even if that did
you've clarified it. You've clarified it. I just couldn't tell from your previous comments where you're coming from. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much for that lively discussion. Is there anyone like to make a motion, or we'll move on to our next topic?
I would like to make a motion that we offer early retirement this year.
Okay, move to offer early retirement this year. Is there a second?
You're muted, Pat.
Sorry, this is Pat, second.
Okay, it's been moved by Dr. Nystrom and seconded by Ms. Stephen to offer early retirement this year. Is there any further discussion? Okay, hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of this motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Okay. Opposed?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, unfortunately with this computer system, I don't have the capability of seeing who said what. But can we have a roll call vote on this real quick, Mitch?
Nystrom,
Yes.
Elfin,
Yes.
Stephen,
Yes.
Pritchard,
Nay.
Malhouse.
Nay. Okay. So the motion does pass 3-2 to offer the early retirement benefits. Next is our board policies. Mr. Truba.
Sure. So we will be going through the course of the year and reviewing all of our board policies. We are supposed to review them at least every 5 years. This one is exactly on time for review. The changes that you saw in your packets with regard to the highlighted portions are due to what Iowa Association of School Boards recommended. There is one policy 106 that is brand new. That's why it's all highlighted. And that is due to some changes in Title IX regulations. And that's a recommendation by Iowa Association of School Boards. So the changes presented are due to that. And I would recommend approval.
Okay, is there a motion?
This is Pat. I move the approval of the policies.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay. It has been moved and seconded to approve the 100 series policy for the school board. Discussions or questions? Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of approving, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Next on the agenda is a special meeting date. Ms. Tripa?
Sure, we need to schedule a special meeting to approve a DLR contract. That's something that we did not have present tonight because we were working out some of the details with regard to contract language. So we need to set a special meeting so we aren't waiting a whole month to get that in motion.
Okay, board members. Unfortunately, my screen is switched. So I got Pam on one screen and I got Pat on another screen. So this is probably only going to be a 5-10 minute meeting. I think we can do it via Zoom session sometime. I guess I would give the attorneys and DLR the rest of this week to work things out. So I think that puts us to sometime next week, next Monday night. A few of us are going to be busy. We're going to be presenting to the city council. So it would have to be Tuesday or Wednesday, either morning or either do something at 7:30 or 8 o'clock in the morning versus doing something at 6:30 or 7 o'clock at night for 5 minutes. Anyone have so next Tuesday and Wednesday, morning, evening, anyone have any conflicts with any of those 4 options?
Tuesday, I have IASB delegate.
Okay.
Starting at 6:30, so Tuesday night would not be good.
And
okay.
Wednesday from 1 to 7:30 is the IASB conference. So.
That's right. Okay. Okay. Yeah.
You do it over lunch?
That's true.
I'm not available during the day.
Okay, so
On
School
the
Board
19th.
Association.
Not easily, anyway.
Okay, on the 19th, we have a board meeting at 5 o'clock. Or we discussed it at one point.
On the 19th?
That's
19th?
still,
We have a PR committee.
Thursday.
we talked about getting back from, or getting offline from our IASB meetings. And back, earlier in the day that we probably would be able to meet at 5. Is that too late?
I think that was your
Add to
PR
that
committee.
agenda? Yeah, is that too late to add to the agenda that night at DLR?
I don't have anything for the board.
I don't think that was a full board meeting. I think that was just the Public Relations Committee.
We have Public Relations Committee.
Was
at
that
6.
just public relations? Okay.
How late
We do it
does
as,
Wednesday night, the 18th,
So IASB
goes
runs
till how late?
through the evening.
About 3:30 it looked like in the schedules or something like that. I'd have to look again.
There were opportunities, I believe, from 6 to 7:30 if no one's going to take advantage of the 6 to 7:30 times. I think it was specific to specific roles. I'm not sure, but I could be wrong.
I have not looked at the details yet.
I just know that I'm pretty sure they had evening sessions available, but not everyone takes it, you know, has an interest in that. So if we don't have people already signed up for those times, then we could do it in the evening.
What about Thursday? Your PR committee, that's 6 o'clock, is that correct?
5 o'clock is
So-
what I have.
5 o'clock?
Yes.
Jill, what time do you have? I have 6. Or not Jill, she wouldn't be in it.
Matt, do
who else
you
is
have
in it?
it?
Pam, you have 5, I had 6.
I have 5 written down on my.
I thought
Okay.
it was 6 o'clock too.
I thought
That's,
it was
but
6,
I could have
okay.
missed that based on our discussion. So
Okay.
6 o'clock. Well, that works too.
Well, if we schedule the board meeting at 5 and we'll just make sure PR goes at 6, is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe I worked the ER that day. I'd have to make sure. What about 7 o'clock that morning or 7:30 that morning? Thursday morning. Anyone busy that morning?
Yeah, IASB.
What time does that start at?
at 8 o'clock.
8.
Okay. We just shoot for 7:30 that morning. Since we're all online.
That's difficult for me. If you don't mind a baby attending it too.
That's fine. It's only going to be about a 3-minute meeting.
Okay. So which day?
Thursday, the 19th. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, Thursday 19th at 7:30 a.m. It will just be the approval of the DLR contract. It's at the lawyer's office right now. There were some issues with the original contract didn't get sent appropriately, so they're ironing out some details. So hopefully we'll have that by the 19th. We'll get in your hands a couple days in advance to look at, and if there's no questions, we can just have a quick 5-minute meeting.
Pat, I used to bring my kids to the early morning meetings. It's no problem.
Good, good, fantastic. You might be screaming. I'll be on mute.
That's okay. Okay. Superintendent's report.
Okay, so we talked a lot about return to learn. So I'm going to focus on a thank you that we received from Ballard. We received a thank you from Ballard Schools. For those that were unaware, we did allow Ballard to utilize our football field because theirs was heavily damaged by the derecho storms. And they specifically wanted to thank Mr. Collins for being so willing to meet with them prior to the game, show them what they needed to do to run the football contest, to specifically thank the custodial staff and concession stand workers. They felt that they were welcomed with open arms and very much appreciated the help that we provided them in their time of need, and hope that they can reciprocate to fellow Raccoon River Conference schools in the future if needed. So I just wanted to publicly acknowledge the individuals that helped ensure that Ballard had a smooth run of utilizing our facilities, and to express to everyone that we do work together for the betterment of our student bodies in all of our districts. So just a thank you from Ballard that I wanted to share with everyone.
Yeah. Yes. And I also spoke with one of their school board members. A friend of mine, he also wanted to express from their board their gratitude for what all of our school employees did, especially Mr. Collins for all his help, and the Booster Club and all those, and made sure that those events went off smoothly. Anything else?
I will be sharing more details with all of you about the learning that did take place over the weekend. I had shared, for those that are unaware, I do participate in a group with the National Superintendent's Organization going through National Superintendent Certification, and a weekend full of learning that was extremely valuable to the work that we're currently doing, gave me an opportunity to speak with individuals across the nation who are experiencing the very same conversations that we experienced tonight with regard to what mode of learning to be in. And it was extremely beneficial. And I just will publicly thank the board for supporting that professional development for me as a superintendent, as those opportunities are not necessarily very frequent. And this is one that I think as we progress through some of the board goals that we have, you'll be able to see some of the effects of that professional development coming to fruition because the topics are very relevant to our current board goals. So I will share more as we continue to talk about each of those things, but I just wanted to thank you for supporting that effort and how much I appreciated that opportunity to learn over the weekend.
Okay, thank you very much. And hearing nothing else, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
Could you explain quickly what conferences? Were high school conferences online to begin with, and now elementary is moving to online conferences, or what was the change there?
As far as our conference schools, what are they currently?
No, parent-teacher conferences.
Parent-teacher conferences. Yes. Okay. So middle school and high school had already arranged to do conferences virtually, but our elementary had planned to be on site. But we did shift that this morning, given the fact that the community rate is going up and it's adults in the building. We have limited from the beginning of the year the fact that we've tried to limit the number of adults coming into this the building. So given that conferences are mainly adults to adults, and that's where we're seeing most of the spread, we wanted to be proactive in helping to keep the spread from continuing. So those opportunities for conferences are now going online. And so both while all the elementary schools all parents should have received communication from their teachers with further instructions. If not, you can see the building-wide communication on each of the buildings' Facebook pages, and they, again, the teachers should have emailed out more information on how to connect either online or by phone for those conferences. And it was to, again, try and keep our students on site as much as possible and limit the spread. So thank you, Jeremy. I totally forgot about that. That's what happens in a day like this.
So the teachers will be at school though for
The
conferences.
teachers will be at school doing the conferences virtually, but they will be at school.
Okay, thank you.
We are simply trying to limit the numbers of people in the building. If you can remember, our conferences are scheduled to go till 8 at night, and then the very next morning we would have students in the building. So the ability to disinfect and clean to the level that we were comfortable with was not possible given our current numbers. So that was the reason for the shift this late in the game.
Okay, any other comments, questions from board members?
I move to adjourn.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Okay, meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much for all your help tonight.